Hello there, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on German politics. In the German BND, an employee has probably passed on state secrets to Russia, and it is now clear what information was involved in the German security service. According to media reports, the suspected BND double agent, unmasked last week, could have passed on secret information about the situation in Ukraine to Russia. That was reported by German TV stations on Monday. It was also said, citing information from security circles, that the officer may have been blackmailed. According to the report, the Federal Public Prosecutor or the Foreign Intelligence Service BND did not want to comment on this. Both only referred to their press releases from last Thursday. The BND employee Carsten L. was exposed by the Federal Intelligence Service itself and, according to the authorities, was arrested on Wednesday last week on the instructions of the federal prosecutor. He is accused of having passed on state secrets to a Russian secret service. After the 2021 federal election year, large donations to the parties collapsed. Small parties received substantial grants, though. The party's income from large donations has fallen drastically this year. After a record income of around 12.5 million euros in the 2021 federal election year, the major parties represented in parliament together only came to around 760,000 euros in 2022. This sum was shared by the Christian Democrats with 570,000 and the Greens with 190,000. Social Democrats, Liberals, CSU, Link and AfD all went away empty-handed by Christmas, according to the Bundestag publication. The SSW, which was represented for the first time with a member of parliament, received around 500,000 euros, but this represents a special case. However, some major donors often only transfer money to the parties shortly before or after Christmas. It will take a few days for the Bundestag to publish it again. This could improve the balance sheet a bit. The DKP, which is not represented in the Bundestag, can feel like a king of donations. The Communist Party received the largest single donation of 270,255 euros, and together with another donation of 80,000 euros, it generated income of 350,000 euros. In the 2017 federal elections, the DKP was initially not even admitted. They first had to fight for participation before the Federal Constitutional Court. Political parties in Germany are mainly financed by membership fees, money from the state, and donations. The parties must immediately report individual donations of more than 50,000 euros to the President of the Bundestag, who must publish the information promptly. Donations that exceed 10,000 euros per year must be recorded in the statements of accounts with the name and the address of the donor and the total amount. It will be forwarded to the President of the Bundestag, that's the federal parliament. The armaments companies Rheinmetall and Krauss-Maffei-Wegmann want to repair the defective Puma infantry fighting vehicles in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The companies announced this in a joint statement on Wednesday. Some of the tanks have been examined for the exact damage patterns since Wednesday at the Rheinmetall Unterlüß site in Lower Saxony, among other places. Experts from KMW and Rheinmetall have been sent to the Bundeswehr locations where other Puma vehicles are located, they said. All efforts are now directed towards repairing the vehicles in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is what the companies said. Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht had previously given the industry a tight window of opportunity to repair the failed Puma tank. I'll give them a few weeks' time because I need reliable systems and not ones that I might be able to use sometime in 2025. That's what the SPD politician told Deutschlandfunk on Wednesday. Over the weekend, it became known that all 18 of the tanks used during a firing exercise by the Bundeswehr for participation in the NATO intervention force VJTF had failed. The tracked vehicle, plagued by numerous technical problems, was only declared fit for combat last year. According to media reports, the FDP foreign politician and parliamentary group leader Alexander Graf Lambsdorff is to become the German ambassador in Moscow. The so-called traffic light coalition has agreed on this. That's what the Postal The Pioneer reported, citing information from government circles. There was no official confirmation of this on Tuesday, though. The German magazine Spiegel also reported on the personnel. According to the Pioneer report, the coalition has agreed to fill several high-ranking ambassadorships. The State Secretary in the Foreign Office and former ambassador in London, Andreas Michaelis, is to become the new German ambassador in Washington. He and Lambsdorff should both take up their new posts in the summer. Lambsdorff was previously in the diplomatic service, including in the planning staff of the Federal Foreign Office and in the press staff of the German embassy in Washington. From 2003 to 2004, he worked as a country officer for Russia in the German Foreign Ministry. Gesa Andreas von Geier is currently the German ambassador to Russia. Lambsdorff has taken a clear stance on Putin. He has repeatedly condemned Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. He does not currently believe that a purely diplomatic solution is possible. The solution to the conflict is initially a military one, he said on TV appearances and in interviews. And I met him personally once, and he's quite a reasonable guy. The federal government approved arms exports for at least 8.35 billion euros this year. That is already the second highest value in the history of the Federal Republic. Only last year was the number even higher at 9.35 billion euros. More than a quarter of the weapons and military equipment delivered from January 1st to December 22nd went to Russia invaded Ukraine. This emerges from a response from the Federal Ministry of Economics to a request from left-wing MP Sevim Dagdelen. The letter is available to the German press agency, and that's why we all know about this. In the coalition negotiations, at the urging of the Social Democrats and the Greens, the traffic light government actually intended to reduce arms exports and introduce a control law for this purpose. Then came the U-turn with the Ukraine war. The self-imposed ban on arms deliveries to war zones was quashed by Chancellor Olaf Scholz in his Zeitenwende speech on February 27th, a break with principles that have been in place for decades. Since then, armament supplies worth 2.24 billion euros have been approved for Ukraine, including many heavy weapons such as 30 Gepard anti-aircraft tanks, 14 self-propelled howitzers, so the Howitzer 2000, 5 multiple rocket launchers and the Iris-T anti-aircraft system. However, the high overall value of export licenses is not solely due to this. Even without Ukraine, exports worth more than 6 billion euros were approved. Just for comparison, in the 16 years of Chancellor Angela Merkel's government, the 6 billion mark was exceeded only 5 times. The value given by the Ministry of Economics for the current year can still increase. Only permits up to and including December 22nd are recorded. The Federal Ministry of Defense has launched a pilot project for the construction and reopening of ammunition depots for the German armed forces. We lacked depots because they were closed under my predecessors. That will change now, said Federal Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht to the German newspaper Welt am Sonntag. The Bundeswehr lacks infrastructure everywhere. In the course of the pilot project, close cooperation with the building authorities of the federal states is planned, is what Lambrecht said. 4 ammunition depots and material stores were reactivated this year. 2 more will follow next year and then 2 more, she said. And further new buildings for ammunition storage are in the planning stage. In addition, more was invested in ammunition this year than in the last 20 years, said Lambrecht. We will top that in 2023 because we managed to get additional funds from the budget committee. Yeah, because she forgot to include them in the first place. According to Lambrecht, only weapon systems with the associated ammunition should be purchased in the future. That's exactly what has been neglected for many years, she explained. Yeah, but who was in the government in those years? German companies can no longer rely on export and investment guarantees from the federal government when doing business with Iran. In view of the very serious situation in Iran, the Federal Ministry of Economics has suspended foreign trade funding instruments and German-Iranian business formats. As the ministry also announced on Friday in Berlin, this includes export credit and investment guarantees, the German-Iranian Energy Dialogue, the Manager Training Program, and the Foreign Trade Fair Program. Exceptions can only be made for reliable humanitarian reasons, they said. According to the information, the assumption of export and investment guarantees for Iran was suspended for decades anyway. Only since 2016, after the lifting of EU sanctions, among other things, there has been a brief phase in which these instruments were opened. In this opening phase, for example, guarantees were given or extended for a few projects with regard to investment guarantees. Since the end of 2018, however, the federal government has not had any applications for new investment guarantees for decision. The same applies to export credit guarantees. The federal government assumed guarantees in 2017 and 2018, but not since 2019. The Ministry of Economics, in consultation with the departments, has now decided to completely suspend the instruments mentioned. The background is the violent action taken by Iranian security forces against demonstrators. The trigger for the nationwide protests was the death of the Iranian Kurd Gina Mahsa Amini. She died in police custody on September 16th after being arrested by the morality police for breaking the Islamic dress code. The federal chancellor earns less than many heads of state-owned companies and institutions. This emerges from a list from the Federal Ministry of Finance, which was sent to the parliamentary manager of the left-wing faction in the Bundestag, Jan Korte, after a request and several correspondence. The editorial network Germany, or BND, had first reported on it. According to the list, 21 members of the board or management of federal companies or institutions have a higher annual salary than Olaf Scholz, who gets around 360,000 euros a year. According to this, the top earner is the CEO of Deutsche Bahn, Richard Lutz, with an annual salary of 900,000 euros, ahead of the managing director of the Bundesdruckerei with 863,000 euros. Behind them are other board members of Deutsche Bahn and members of the board of the State Development Bank KfW, who receive between 555,400 and 687,600 euros a year. Managing directors of various Helmholtz research centers, the German Air Traffic Control, the Autobahn GmbH, the toll operator Toll Collect, and the Federal Finance Agency are partly above the salary of a chancellor or come close to it. In the correspondence with the ministry, Korte had specifically addressed Federal Finance Minister Christian Lindner from the Liberals. He had said that no director of a public broadcaster should earn more than the federal chancellor. A self-commitment is necessary in order to be economical with the money of the fee payers. The left-wing politician wrote to Lindner that he could understand this demand. However, in order to be able to classify your claim, it would be important to know who in the federal institutions or companies receives a higher salary than the federal chancellor, Korte wrote. After repeated inquiries, the ministry sent the deputy the said list, in which the salaries of a total of 151 members of the board of directors and managers of various federal companies and institutions are listed. And this concludes this week's report on German politics, but you know the next one will be up tomorrow on British politics. So I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.